And in fewer than 100 days, the Trump administration has transformed U.S. immigration policy. Those controversial deportations of alleged Venezuelan gang members to El Salvador, done by reviving an over 200-year-old wartime law to bypass normal deportation procedures. Military presence at the southern border with Mexico has been amped up, and immigration enforcement is now permitted in previously protected spaces such as schools and churches. Legal immigration pathways are also closing, such as a program that previously helped more than 500,000 people from Central America and the Caribbean. Plus, an executive order challenging birthright citizenship threatens U.S.-born children of immigrants. All of these moves and more are being challenged in the federal court. Okay, let's talk about how we got here and some of the changes in the immigration policy made so far. To talk about this wide array of issues facing both illegal and legal immigrants in the United States, we're joined by our friend Joseph Williams, a journalist and former senior editor at the U.S. News and World Report. Joseph, good to see you again.
How are you, Sean? Good to be here.
I'm good. What does President Bukele's visit signal about future U.S. Central American cooperation on the immigration policy?
It signals, at least from the administration's perspective, that it's full speed ahead, that they've got the cooperation of El Salvador. They're looking to expand El Salvador's role in helping America handle the detainees and helping them ship them overseas to where they're apparently, at least as far as the administration is concerned, beyond the reach of federal law. So it's not a good sign for the rule of law. It's not a good sign, definitely, for anybody looking for a humane kind of policy for the United States to deal with immigration. And it's particularly worrisome for the relatives of Abreu Garcia, who are still no doubt worried sick about his return, whether or not he's actually going to come back. And it's going to be challenging to not hear those voices in their heads that Bukele saying, shrugging kind of, what do you expect me to do? That's not going to be encouraging for anyone. And it's an open defiance of the United States Supreme Court.
You know, I think that you would say that a lot of conservatives right now are looking for closer cooperation with leaders such as Bukele to help address what they see as root causes of migration, such as crime and economic instability. Do you see it going that way?
Well, you're right in two respects. One, that they are looking to Central American countries to clamp down on crime and to end the root causes of migration. But two, that's not the way to go about it if you ask most immigration experts, number one, and if you ask most human rights experts, number two, because the root causes of crime are not going to be solved by locking everyone up. And as we've seen so far, when you lock up a whole bunch of people, you tend to get a few that are not even remotely affiliated with crime, and that they do have little to no recourse once they're into the system. They're almost disappeared. So they are attacking the root causes, and yes, El Salvador is way safer now than it was maybe even 5 years ago or 2 years ago, but at what cost? At the cost of innocent men going to prison, at the cost of society losing its rights, certainly probably at the cost of the ballot box, because one kind of wonders whether or not the world's coolest dictator is going to leave office should the populists decide to turn him out.
Yeah, and also what about the economic implications, both positive and negative, of this stricter immigration enforcement on U.S. labor markets? Because people who want to come here for reasons where they had always been accepted are now finding the door closed.
That's exactly right. I mean, to economic theorists on the right, this is very much good news, because the theory has been that unchecked migration drives down wages for the United States. It hampers productivity. It keeps people and Americans from having a higher wage and from being able to afford some of the goods that they can buy to make the world go round. But practically speaking, if you take a closer look at exactly who's being deported, we're not seeing a lot of raids at chicken plants, let's say, or at Armor Meats, or at Hormel, or at Tyson Chickens, where we know that a lot of undocumented immigrants are hard at work slicing chickens and working in factories to try to make the American agriculture machinery go. These are roundups and sweeps from random places for people who kind of are suspected of being illegal migrants, and who really don't have much of a due process once they're caught up in these sweeps. And the one thing I also would say is that the whole notion behind here, the whole strategy here, seems to be one of fear and self-deportation. Fear that you might get rounded up and never be seen or heard from your loved ones again. The second one, that if you get to the United States, you're not going to be let in and you're not going to be even allowed to make the work. So certainly things have calmed down significantly at the border. But again, we're looking at kind of an erosion here where we might have a short-term gain for a much longer-term cost further down the road.
Hey, Joe, we're about a minute or so left. We can spend time chatting. But looking at the case of the mistakenly deported man, how could this perhaps pave the way moving forward where Trump is basically just digging in his heels saying, I'm not going to cooperate with the courts. You can't make me.
He's already doing it kind of tacitly because the court instructed him to facilitate a return. Yet when Bukele says, hey, there's nothing I can do, you don't hear the administration step up. I think it was very telling what Pam Bondi said, because she's very much on the leading edge here. And it's very likely that some administration attorneys may be held in contempt. She certainly seems like a candidate in that way. So we've got a low boil constitutional crisis here. Trump was already staking out his ground. The move and the ball is now at the Supreme Court's court, if you will.
One more quick one. Do you see humanitarian entities getting more involved in this, other than the lawsuits that are going on? What can be done to protect people who rightfully are here?
Well, I think so. I think humanitarian causes are going to step up, but ultimately the courts have the last word. And if the last word is being ignored, there's really not much that can be done. The one thing I will say, the one semi-positive here, is that it is putting a harsh spotlight on the counterterrorism detention center in El Salvador. There's probably going to be a lot more attention, perhaps even some mobilization, perhaps even some court action to try to figure out exactly what to do here and to figure out a way to have this happen only on a humane and reasonable scale.
Okay, Joseph, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much for your insight.
Take care, Sean.